I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to die before I'm 50. I realized I'd been lied to. It was simple as that, because I was getting fatter. I was pre-diabetic, red blotches here whenever I got stressed. Got fitter. I reversed my pre-diabetes. My low left quadrant pain completely vanished. My skin's got better. My eyesight got better. And my hearing got better. As fat consumption's gone down, animal protein consumption has gone down, seed oil consumption has gone up, grain consumption has gone up. And while we've done that, everyone's got fatter and sicker. Their job is to sell food to people that's going to make them addicted, to actually manipulate the food to be like that, to find the bliss point. It's not fantasy. That's what's happening. It's changed people's lives. I've literally had people message me and say, you have saved my life. If you say I'm addicted to alcohol, everyone will try to help you. You say I'm addicted to cigarettes, everyone will try to help you. If you say I'm addicted to sugar, nobody. You're just an idiot.
Hello and welcome. Carrie here from Healing Humanity, the power of a proper human diet. And today I am thankful, grateful, blessed to have Coach Stephen on the channel. Coach Stephen, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and I just want to thank you for having me on. It's an absolute honor. I'm really so appreciative of the work you're doing, because spreading the word is what we need to do, and nothing could be better than doing a decent documentary about real people and real success stories. So I take my hat off to you as somebody who's organized things like 24-hour live streams myself and getting guests on and trying to find success stories. It's hard work, but it's absolutely, totally worth it. So yeah, you're doing great work, Kerry.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And my hat's off to you as well. You have done 2 24-hour live streams. You are a better man than I am. I did one and I'm not doing it anymore. How did the second one go? I joined for a while. It was wonderful. I enjoyed watching, but how did it go from your perspective?
Yeah, it's good. I always think it's going to be more busy than it is, but it was busier than last year. In the first hour, I had over 770 comments. So I didn't have a moderator that I work with closely. Dr. Chafee's moderator actually, volunteered. But the amount of people that were asking questions was incredible. So anyone that thinks that carnivore no one's interested in, well, that's just the comments. That's just the messages asking questions. Thousands, in the tens of thousands of views already, which is really good. The guests were great. Only one guest forgot to turn up, but they were really apologetic. And they're doing a special thing on Thursday. Dr. Sean Baker, who's, I'm a big fan of Dr. Sean Baker. He did the first one, and just the way it works. But the great thing about that, the reason I mention that is not to be bad about Sean, because Sean is fabulous. We had somebody step in called Dr. Abs, who stepped in and just lit up the whole room as somebody nobody had heard of before, allegedly. I mean, he has got quite a big following on YouTube, but my lot had not heard of him before, and he was brilliant. So fate always plays a big hand in these sort of things. Dr. Ken Berry was traveling. He was trying to get on, but couldn't do that. So yeah, it was good. It was really good.
How are you?
How am I?
Did you survive? Were you more tired this time, or were you able to get through it okay?
More tired this time, because the volume of questions was probably 3-4 times more than we had last year, which was a bit of a curveball, as you say in America, for me. And also I did the stupid thing thinking I'm indestructible and carnivore. So instead of going straight to sleep afterwards, I went out 2 hours later and I was doing soccer coaching. So,
wow.
Silly, really. But I think the other thing is I learned last year, it's really nice to sort of edit the 24 hours into chunks. So I've been doing that. I haven't really rested since then. And obviously I've got coaching on top of that. You can get your little small violins out now, because I've sounded like a sob story. But I want to get that out nice and quick and sort of get on the back of the action. So I think in a couple of weeks' time, I will be recovered. But it's just totally worth it. Absolutely worth it.
It's awesome. I think I caught the part with the doctor you mentioned that jumped in for Dr. Baker, and he was incredible. It was very interesting. People don't realize, too, like what's going on behind the scenes with the comments coming through, or just I never would have thought before I did the 24-hour live stream, the logistical nightmare of trying to schedule all of that and plan it all and have people give them plenty of time, but not too much time. And it's a lot. So my hat's off to you. Everyone go check that out too. I will have a link to Coach Stephen's YouTube channel in the description below. You're breaking it up into little.
Can I
videos.
also shout out my co-host, Richard Smith,
Yes,
who
yes,
did
please do.
both of them with me? So last year, I didn't know Richard Smith from Adam. He's the Keto Pro. He's based in Wales, which is part of the UK. And I did a coaching success story with a chap who just happened to mention him. This was before the 24-hour, the first time we did it. I said, oh, this guy sounds really interesting. I'm going to contact him and see if I can get him on the channel. Got him on the channel. He was brilliant. And then I just, when you just warm to someone straight away, and I just said, do you know what? Why don't you co-host my 24-hour live stream if you're up for it? And he said, yeah, okay, sounds good.
Nice.
So since then, we've sort of done every single Sunday for an hour, doing the live stream for an hour, loads of question and answer sessions. And like I say, we've done the 2 live 24-hour ones as well. So, yeah. So that's Richard Smith, the Keto Pro. Check him out if you haven't.
Richard Smith. Awesome. So I'll have links in the description for all of that. I'm looking forward to chatting with you more, Coach Stephen, to hear more of your personal story. That's what this documentary, it's all about, the individual stories. And then I want to learn more about coaching and some of the things you've learned there, maybe some of the success stories as well. Could we maybe start off with just talking more about your story? Like, could you tell us your personal carnivore story?
Yeah, I certainly can. I was the poster boy for the food guidelines, or at least should have been, because my family, both my parents, believed in low fat, no red meat, no saturated fat, skim milk, porridge oats, bran flakes, lots of fruit and veg. Sadly, they both died when I was young. My mother got colon cancer. So this is one of the reasons I get a little bit cross about the vegetarian and vegans who say that red meat causes colon cancer, because my mother avoided the things that apparently she needs to avoid, and she ate the things she's supposed to eat, and she got colon cancer. But now that isn't a one-off, by the way. I've since learned that this is really common when people go low fat, calorie restricted, vegan or vegetarian, and which is not knocking those people. They're thinking of their health. They're trying to do something. But I certainly don't like them telling me that what I'm doing is bad for my colon when it was what they're saying was bad for my mum's colon. I also lost a girlfriend in my 20s to breast cancer as well. So I don't want to get too much into that. I still believed in high carb. I was a semi-pro soccer player. I won a tennis tournament, a singles tennis tournament. That's what that picture is there for. These medals are for running, which was later in my life when I was in my 40s. So all up until my 40s, I did not smoke. I did not drink. I was very active. I was a personal trainer. I eventually became an advanced personal trainer and managed to get one of my people to the Olympics throwing javelins. I was type 1 diabetic, which is important for my story. And, I was eating less, moving more, and doing all the low fat rubbish. And then when I got to my 40s, I realized I'd been lied to. It was simple as that, because I was getting fatter. I was pre-diabetic. I was experiencing lower left quadrant pain. So I was having colonoscopies, and obviously thinking about my mother. I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to die before I'm 50. And yet I've done everything that I've been told. All the guidelines I've followed to a T, and it's got me, and I just immediately thought it must be genetic then. I fell for that one as well, by the way. So anyway, one of the things about the personal training is I just want to get better and better at it. And this type 1 diabetic came for coaching, and I found out that I could be qualified as a specialist practitioner, not a general practitioner, in obesity and diabetes, because I really wanted that certificate to be on what's called the GP referral list and to actually take my qualifications further. So I did that. And I realized there that I was being told stuff that didn't seem to correlate to what I was seeing in real people. And I put my hand up when they said you dose your insulin in relation to carbohydrate intake. And I just put my hand up and said, why not just reduce your carbohydrate intake? And was laughed out of the room. So anyway, carried on with that, and then did advanced qualifications in that area because I really wanted to know what was going on. Then I found that people that were coming to me that were doing really well were ignoring what I was saying and doing low carb or keto, which, wasn't really a thing then. That was 15 years ago. I'm 60 now. And I just opened my eyes to what was going on, that I was obviously, my own example was I used to have really terrible skin, big red blotches here whenever I got stressed. I was getting fat, coronary artery calcium scan of 639. And yet all these people were coming in And the ones that were doing really well and lowering their blood glucose and looking healthier and their body composition was going right, were all ignoring the standard duty of care, and they were just going low carb. So anyway, cut a long story short, I got to 50 and decided I'm going to do this for myself. I'm also going to learn about bloods. So I opened up a private blood testing clinic, which was doing rehab. I qualified as a phlebotomist, got into the bloods as well, speaking to doctors, because the doctor's comments on some of the bloods didn't correlate to what I've seen with the people. I've ended up writing a book about the bloods with my experience, how the guide to blood, it's called the Guide to Blood Tests in the context of low carb, keto, and carnivore diet, because they're interpreted wrong. And I can sort of give you some practical examples later. But my story is, then I learned about the bloods. Then I decided to get my second degree and study physiology and health sciences. So I've got an honours degree in that. And the more I learned, the more I realised, firstly, there's lots of things I don't know. I still feel that is true. I know maybe 5% of what I would love to know. But I know enough now to be able to coach people. I've had over 1,000 success stories, great reviews from people that I've coached that have reversed things like, well, they've come off dialysis, kidney transplant lists, stage 3, kidney disease reversal. I've had tons of people just off their diabetic meds. In fact, it's got to the point where I don't even mention it first because it's so easy for them. It's not easy, actually. It's simple. It still takes some work. But anyway, reversing their type 2 diabetes, reversing kidney disease, people lowering their blood pressure left, right, and centre. Loads of people losing, 30, 40, 50 pounds, 100 pounds. It's incredible, because the 5 years of coaching I did at the advanced level when I was high carb, I didn't have success stories like this. I had some reasonable success. And yes, I got somebody to the Olympics, but they were already fit and they were young. But older people would really struggle. So I've got fitter. I reversed my pre-diabetes. My low left quadrant pain completely vanished. My skin's got better. My eyesight got better. And my hearing got better. I wear hearing aids. I lip read. I have severe hearing loss. I have to rely on a very big speaker here and really good hearing aids. If I'm doing my own interview, I use closed captions on Zoom. And my audiologist was absolutely gobsmacked, as they say, because I've been having audiology tests since age 23, when I started losing my hearing, wearing hearing aids from that period of time. And my hearing's just got worse and worse and worse and worse until I went low carb, and it started, the worsening got less progressive. So it slowed down, and then it sort of came to a halt, and it stayed steady. And then I started to improve when I went carnivore, which the audiologist still doesn't believe was down to going carnivore, but that's the only difference. I'm really boring. I eat the same things, exercise the same way. So that was the only difference. So pretty miraculous, really. I feel my cognitive ability is better. I've done 2 degrees in my life. I've got an English literature honours degree, which I did when I was high carb, and that was much harder work than doing the science degree. So I think I've answered your question. I haven't rescanned my CACs yet because there's a huge waiting list in Britain. The way it works is that if I pay to biohack and get a handy number, which is great for my followers, I take somebody else's space. And I don't want to take the space of somebody who is doing the CAC scan because they're seriously ill. So I'm going to wait until that waiting list has gone down. But I've got to the point actually where I've spoken to people, and I've got success stories of people reversing their CAC scores with this way of eating, that I'm actually not that bothered. I feel good. I'm fitter than I was 10 years ago. I'm still playing soccer 3 times a week. Incidentally, when I was 20, I was told by a doctor I'd be in a wheelchair by the time I'm 50. And I was shown very convincing images of my hip, how bad it was. And here I am at 60, still running around a soccer field. So I think they were wrong there as well. But that's I think that's my story, basically.
Wow. You look fantastic for 62, by the way. One of the questions I had, so you've been doing athletics your whole life. How has that changed, if any, going from high carb to low carb carnivore?
Well, I gained more muscle once I went local. Well, my body composition changed. I was getting tubby. I was getting the classic sort of donut around my waist, even though I was running 10 miles 3 times a week and eating low fat. I was getting fatter and I was pre-diabetic. So my performance has improved. My body composition has improved. I gained more muscle in a 1 year period than I'd ever gained. And I did do a bodybuilding tournament as well in my 20s. So I really was quite serious about bodybuilding. It was a natural one. It wasn't enhanced with any performance enhancing material. So yeah, I know how hard it is to gain muscle. And even in my 20s, and doing that, going to the point where I was actually up there on stage. I've got pictures of that. When I got to 55, I started doing carnivore and I gained more muscle with that first year. At 55, and again, without any, medications or any sort of artificial help, I've gained more muscle in that year than any other period of my life. I started doing X3 as well, the X3 bar, which I think a lot of carnivores are really hooked into, which is very good. I'm now back at the gym because I miss the sort of feeling of being in the gym. So I'm doing that. But I am doing the classic cross cancelling. I'm trying to gain muscle, but also doing like an endurance thing, which is soccer. So I'm not going to get big like a bag of walnuts anymore. But yeah, the performance is good. And, my coach, I'm a consumer. Although I am a coach, I believe in people coaching me as well. I think it's a good thing. And my soccer coach says he's never seen anyone of 60 years of age move like I do. So depends on what your sense of humor is. You could take that as bad or good, but I think he's saying it in a good way. So
I think so.
yeah.
On the hearing loss, I've heard so many interesting stories. I just interviewed a gentleman who had type 2 diabetes and he was losing his vision. He started carnivore and stopped the vision loss and actually started to notice some improvement where he could start seeing more light. What do you attribute to your hearing loss improving eating a carnivore diet?
I suppose it's twofold. One is you're reducing systemic inflammation, which is I just think really common. And secondly, you're giving your body the nutrients to repair and restore those mechanisms. So all your structures are made out of protein and fats. If you're starving your body of protein and fats, then it's going to struggle to rebuild. I mean, it's just like if you were building a new house and you were going to do it out of bricks and wood and glass and slates, and you had a really bad supplier who was just occasionally dropping off your materials, you wouldn't be able to get on very well. You'd be able to patch it up and, maybe put a window in here, but the other window, well, you'd have to put some tarpaulin or something up instead of the right thing. The house would function, but it wouldn't be great. And if suddenly a new supplier came along and said, do you know what? We can just give you tons and tons of materials. You'd be like, wow, I've been waiting for this for years. I can make this house fantastic. Well, that's the difference. I'm getting all the nutrients I need, all the proteins, all the fats. I'm not damaging my body. So that's the other equation. It isn't just the food that is great. It's the fact I'm not eating the other stuff. I'm not eating the seed oils. I'm not, ingesting loads of carbohydrates that I don't need. Fiber, which is, just indigestible rubbish that ends up in the toilet. I don't need all that stuff. I need proteins and fats to build structure. And that's what my ears are saying. Thank you very much. And it's quantifiable as well. Like I say, the audiology test is state of the art. It's same machine, same consultant. But I have things like my mobile phone. I don't know if I can actually show you the screen, but it's really quite simple. I have a volume control for my hearing aids. And while it takes forever to go up, so that's my screen there. Yeah. And I have it on number 9 for this. But normally, well, years ago when I started, it would have been at 14. So I've had to turn the volume down. So that's really cool.
That's wonderful. That is one thing I have learned doing carnivore. Prior to this, I was always worried about cholesterol and fat. Everyone says you're going to clog your arteries on carnivore. Inflammation, I think, should be something that everyone in the world is worried about, is concerned with, is trying to address. And it seems like almost nobody is. They're all worried about, you can't eat fatty meat. So, yeah, I'm on the same page with you there. Another question I had for you, Coach Steven. Everyone always asks this question. So you're a carnivore. What do you typically eat in a day on the carnivore diet?
There's a question. Well, one of the things is I offer a meal plan, so I'm quite good at experimenting. So I don't have a set 1 meal a day, 2 meal a day, 3 meal a day. I do eat intuitively. I do understand, and like I say, from the meal plans, I really do understand. There's some people need that structure. When I started coaching, I thought, no, let's do it intuitively, like the animals do, like hunter-gatherers do. Let's just eat when we're hungry. But some people just can't get out of the habit of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So for me, I will eat in the morning when I'm hungry. The first time I'm hungry, I will eat. So it could be 7 o'clock in the morning. It could be 11 o'clock. Normally, I have like 4 or 5 eggs and some form of meat, even sausage, actually, if I'm time pressured. As long as they're high sort of percentage meat, I don't think sausage is that bad. Or I'll have bacon, nothing fancy pants. Sometimes I'll have a bit of steak and eggs. So it's pretty classic. Just now was my second meal, and that was lamb steaks with a little bit of fillet steak. Last week, I was doing a budget meal plan for a few people. So I was trying all sorts of cuts like braising steak and skirt steak. So I will try to be inventive. I like fish. Up until age 50, I couldn't eat any fish. I was highly allergic. That's another benefit, by the way, which I've forgotten to mention. If I was even near the sort of fish shop, I would start feeling itchy and I'd be very hyper allergic to any of the fish, especially white fish. I was hospitalized twice for accidentally ingesting white fish, which again, both were mistakes from food supplies that said there wasn't any fish in the ingredients. I was hospitalized. Well, I can eat a lot of fish now. So I've had 10 years of like, wow, all this stuff that was not available to me, I'm loving. So salmon, I really like. Scallops, I really like. Mackerel, which is fantastic. Nice fatty fish. I'll have crab meat. I do the occasional chicken thighs with the skin on, which is pretty good. Duck, I like. I think lamb is underrated. To be honest, I'm really into variety. I understand people with autoimmune conditions go in for the lion diet. I still feel that lamb should be up there with beef. I think lamb, beef, salt and water would be the perfect lion diet for me personally. I feel that works better because you get such a great amino acid profile. But yeah, sorry, it's not a great answer. But also, when I have tracked, I don't believe in calories at all. I think it's about the type of food you eat, not the calories that you eat, because you can't eat calories because that's a metric for heat. It has nothing to do with nutrition. A couple of years ago, I did an experiment where I did track. I did log my calories, and I think it was about 3,500, 4,000 a day. I'm 5'10", and yeah, I don't put on weight. Whereas I could probably eat half of that with carbohydrates, and I would put on weight. And with the studies with the type 1 diabetics, it proves it's nothing to do with calories. And I've recently seen Ben Bickman saying the same thing I've been saying for the last 5 years. A type 1 diabetic can eat 10,000 calories and not put on any weight. If they don't take their insulin, they can be stick thin. It is an actual thing called bulimia. They deliberately don't take their insulin to keep themselves thin because you can't grow a fat cell without insulin. It's really that simple. So a type 1 diabetic pretty much proves that it's not about calories, it's all about hormones. And there's hundreds of thousands of people that prove that. There's other examples. But anyway, I just eat as much as I feel I need. I've stopped coffee recently, and I was drinking Swiss water decaf up until age 59. I could tolerate it. But there's a thing called acrylamides that accumulates in your joints. This is from the roasting process. It's nothing to do with the caffeine, which is what I learned, which is why I mentioned it was Swiss water decaf. And I was starting to get a little bit of joint pain in my knees and my football boots. I thought, well, these aren't soccer boots, I should say. Sorry for the Americans. I thought maybe these don't fit anymore. Maybe they're a bit small. I don't know what's happened. But actually, I then stopped the coffee and going back to inflammation. It was inflammation because I'd gone up to 3 times a week playing soccer, and I just assumed, it's just because I was playing more, I wasn't recovering. So I just did what everyone does in the mainstream. Oh, this is just age. This is just because I'm doing a bit more. I took the coffee out, and it wasn't because I was doing more. It was because my joints were accumulating acrylamide and I was getting joint pain. And I think that's something Dr. Anthony Chaffee mentions quite a bit, that his joint pain when he took coffee out, like I say, not the caffeine, it is the acrylamide. So that's been interesting. I think we should stay on top of what our body is telling us all the time, because I was quite entrenched in that because it worked for me. I thought, well, this is great. I don't need to listen to Anthony, because for me, I'm doing fine with coffee. And there will be people out there that say, he's talking rubbish. I'm doing all right. And that's fine if they are doing all right. But always keep on top of the latest research and science, and listen to people that have got success stories or real live, anecdotes where they've tried things, because it's just, your body changes constantly, adapts to different situations amazingly. And, your taste might change, your allergies might change. Just keep listening to your body, I think.
So your website is the ukcarnivore.com. You're in the UK. We're always talking about the standard American diet. And I guess my question for you is, how are things going in the UK? I guess nutrition-wise, diet-wise, or just in general, our documentaries Healing Humanity. From your perspective, does humanity need healing?
Yeah. Sadly, the UK is trying to be as bad as America. I mean, that's what it seems to be. Can we make the food supply worse? They're falling for everything that the World Economic Forum want us to do, and that's try to sort of avoid eating animals. They're trying to destroy the lives of farmers. We just had an election, and 80% of the people here didn't vote for the person that won. So I'm not deliberately being political. I'm deliberately telling people what's actually going on. So I haven't voted for any of the things that are currently happening, but they're definitely trying to promote a plant-based way of eating. They're definitely trying to shut down farmers. There's a few other things that I won't mention because you'll get taken off YouTube, that are definitely happening. And it's sad. The healthcare system is, as I mentioned earlier, I alluded to the coronary artery calcium scan. There's a huge waiting list. Huge. So I'm not frightened to say that the NHS, the National Health Service, is falling apart. There is over 50% of the people in the NHS have nothing to do with frontline services. That's way too top heavy with management and administration. It's not about healthcare, and they don't talk about healthcare properly. They don't help diabetics. They still give them trash advice. The newspaper is just as bad. The legacy media is just atrocious. I don't care that there's some other influencers in the UK think they're not bad and they're sympathetic. Then that's just flat out not true. They really do not want people to be eating this way. They don't want the success stories. If they do put a success story in, they always use certain words which plant doubt in your mind, like this crazy diet, this bizarre diet has helped this person. They don't report the facts. So it's heartbreaking, and I get at least once a week a message from someone desperately in need of help, and they're just being told an absolute load of rubbish from the people providing the healthcare. Now, I would not have been this blunt 5 years ago. I would have kept my light under a bushel and been diplomatic, but it gets you nowhere, and it's not the truth. The truth is that people are being failed left, right, and centre. I've got it in my family, being told ridiculous information. Only this morning, I coached someone, and they said my son was lied to, flat out lied to, that his bloods were fine, but he was 0.1 point away from being pre-diabetic, and they just said he's fine, let's go away. And I had to convince my son to look at the facts, and he's now listened to me, not the doctors, and he's reversing all his problems. And that happens all the time. So I just got to be a bit more honest. Sorry if that gets you taken down, but
no, I appreciate the honesty. We need it for sure. When I talk to people, they hear I'm eating a carnivore diet. This goes against everything they've ever been told. Like, they want to say things. What is this, some big conspiracy theory? How did we get to where we got the food pyramids wrong? All the dietary advice we're getting is wrong. Over there in the UK, you're saying they're pushing for plant-based. They're doing everything backwards. It's kind of a big question, but how did we get to this place where everything is backwards and wrong, and it seems like a big conspiracy theory?
Money. There's no money in what we're doing. There's no money in being healthy. There's plenty of money in pharmaceuticals. There's plenty of money in supermarkets having stuff on their shelves that has an extended shelf life, that doesn't need to be, it doesn't need any farming as such, no sort of hands-on care for living animals. It's just money. It's just money, greed, and them helping each other. If you go into a supermarket, they don't want you to use cash. They want to get you into sort of the central currency. So there's even talk of, if you do that, if you start paying online, then you will be told off for buying meat and dairy. It's just everywhere. Sadly, people don't believe it. They just still believe that the government is there to look after them, and they can't see the evidence of their own eyes. Right. Everyone's getting fatter and sicker. When you look at the low fat, and there's people out there, big influencers who should know better, that are still defending the LDL hypotheses 70 years after it was first put forward, based on fraud. And it's ridiculous. You got so many people out there, LDL causes heart disease. Well, hang on. 70 years ago, the Sugar Research Foundation paid 2 Harvard scientists to say it was fat that was causing heart disease, not sugar. It was fraud, flat out fraud. And you're still pushing this, and you're still trying to, defend your position. And it frustrates me, because they're too cowardly to say, I've got it wrong. I've been misled. I think it's Mark Twain or someone like that said, it's easier to carry on with that lie than admit you've been misled and you've been fooled. So I think that's the problem. It's deeply entrenched. People have made the wrong decision. That's what I did. I mean, I avoided fat. I believed everything, but then I decided to use my brain and realized that as fat consumption's gone down, animal protein consumption has gone down, seed oil consumption has gone up, grain consumption has gone up, fortified breads with niacin in has gone up, which is an interesting point if you want to look at the nuance of it. And why we've done that, everyone's got fatter and sicker. So although we've got 3 or 4 things there that have gone up and 2 or 3 things that have gone down, we can't say there's any cause. It's still association, but it's a pretty big one when it's the population of America, the population of England, the population of Europe, all doing those same things and all seeing the same outcomes. And it's frightening. I think it's absolutely frightening, because it's so self-evident. With diabetes, for instance, it was called, adult onset diabetes. It wasn't you're diabetic. You didn't see someone of 20 diabetic. That was really rare. It wasn't common. You didn't see people that were obese. If there was somebody that was slightly fat at school, that sadly they would be bullied a little bit. They would be called fatty. Well, that doesn't happen anymore, because it's common. I'm not saying that's good or a bad thing. I'm just saying, the way the language has changed is hiding what's going on. Diabetes is not normal. It's something that people used to get in their adult life, and it was late onset. And you very rarely have someone young have diabetes, and it's just now so normalized. And that's where big food comes in, because they want to continue to sell you stuff that's got refined carbohydrates and sugars in, that they have food scientists making them hyper palatable, so you are addicted. This isn't conspiracy theory. You can find out these people have these jobs. You can go into certain publications, and they are advertising for people to do this. That's their job. Their job is to sell food to people that's going to make them addicted, to actually manipulate the food to be like that, to find the bliss point. It's not fantasy. That's what's happening. So Jerry Seinfeld's joke about a Pop-Tart. A Pop-Tart can't ever go stale because it was never fresh. This is it. We're not eating fresh food. We're eating stuff with colouring in, with lots of chemicals that are dubious, let's put it that way, that we should have in sort of the large amounts that we're having. It's crazy. And I'm quite disheartened by how the world is going. So that's why your sort of healing humanity and actual real stories is so important, because everybody that I have dealt with literally says to me, so what the food guidelines say, do the opposite. And I'm like, absolutely, do the opposite, because that is the thing that's going to reverse your problems, because it does do that time and time again. time and time again. It's never guaranteed. I mean, I've had someone this morning actually use the word terrified. I'm terrified. I've just been told I've got osteoporosis. What on earth can I do? I'm absolutely frightened. I'm like, well, you need to watch my channel, because I talk about my wife who reversed osteoporosis because she went sort of ketovore, and I've got literally hundreds of clients that have done it. You know, we've got people DEXA scans. We've got, you know, people in their 70s reversing osteoporosis. So you don't need to be terrified, but they are terrified. And also the way the health professionals talk is terrifying to me, as in the ignorance, because they'll say it's chronic, it's progressive, it's irreversible, there's nothing you can do, when none of that is true. And there are hundreds of thousands of people that prove that that is not true. And, you know, I've had somebody get their the lesions and their MS completely gone on all the images. And instead of the consultant saying, what are you doing? I need to help other people get to this, they just got cross and said, this shouldn't happen. You know, so although I'm a little bit magnanimous to a lot of people in the healthcare profession, because they are lied to consistently, they are also aware that they can research these things, and hopefully they will stumble across somebody who's reversed the condition, and they just start asking questions, and they're not doing that. They're just rolling over and playing dead and just going along with it. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm with you. The big tragedy for me, and the reason I'm really passionate about this documentary too, is you alluded to this a little bit, but it's a tragedy what's happening with children, this next generation. Here in the US, you go down the grocery store aisle, the cereal, there's cartoon characters on the cereal boxes, and they're doing everything they can to get children hooked on sugar from a young age. It's like a drug dealer. They're lifelong sugar consumers, and they're sick, and they end up pre-diabetic, diabetic. They end up on all of the medication, which makes the medication money. They end up in the hospitals, and the circle just keeps continuing. But the fact that we're, like, for me, when I started learning all this stuff, it was eye-opening. I'm like, but I'm a big boy. I'm just going to move on. I know now. But the fact that it's happening to children, it's kind of the same thing as the cigarette industry used to be. They knew cigarettes would kill people. Knowing that, they then went out and advertised them to children, because they're like, if we get people hooked younger, even though it kills people, we don't care, because every financial driver, or every driver, is just financial and money. And now they're doing the exact same thing with food that they did with cigarettes. So it's so much of what you said really resonates with me. The type 2 diabetes too. We're doing a big live stream actually on Saturday, all about type 2 diabetes, and sharing several stories of people overcoming it. Prior to this, I always thought, oh, that's just some defect that people get, and it's a lifelong ailment they have forever. And I've since learned that no, in almost every single case, you just eat proper human diet and it will reverse. It's not something that you just have. But the language we use with people like that, I have a family member lost half of his foot, type 2 diabetes. He's still eating birthday cake and checking his glucose monitor and drinking Pepsi and eating these things and going to the American Diabetes Association where it says potatoes, those are fine. Fruits and vegetables are fine. And I'm like, I don't eat any of those things. I don't even have type 2 diabetes. Like, what are we talking about here? It's so backwards. But the language we use for this particular family member, he's just like, this is a defect in my body I'm going to have for the rest of my life. And it's like, no, it's not. I was just talking to people. They reverse type 2 diabetes in a couple of weeks, just eating a proper human diet. It's not some ailment, but the language we use, you're absolutely right. We're setting people up for failure. We're giving them an excuse to continue doing this behavior they don't need to be doing.
Yeah, well, if you go back 60 years and you look at the amount of children that had diabetes, the numbers there, and now the numbers as a proportion of children that have diabetes or pre-diabetes, it's through the roof. Well, humans haven't changed.
Right.
Oh, they certainly haven't changed that much, but the food has. So that's the cause. And we can easily go back to how it used to be in the 70s by going back to how we used to eat in the 70s, before the low-fat guidelines, before the stupid food pyramid, which is upside down. When you've even got what's the cartoon thing talking about the food pyramid? I can't remember now. But anyway, there's some American animation where even on there they're talking about the food pyramid is upside down. So it's just completely wrong and so obvious. Like you say, when obvious. Children,
yeah, you're right. It's like once you get out of it, it's so crystal clear too. You mentioned the type 2 diabetes. I just had Dr. Phil Bovady on. He was talking about heart disease. Like this was non-existent before we started eating this processed foods and sugars and highly inflammatory foods. And then the big thing that was eye-opening for me, Healing Humanity, we have all of these health issues, type 2 diabetes, fertility issues, IBS, autoimmune disorders. Later in the journey, we added on cancer. And I started learning as cancer as a metabolic disease from Professor Seafried. And we're seeing cancer rates go through the roof in 40 and 50-year-olds. But they're saying, oh, cancer is a genetic disease. And Professor Seafried saying, well, if it's a genetic disease, why is it going rampant and going up on the same rate that we're eating all this highly inflammatory food? His whole thing is you can get cancer from damaging the mitochondria, and oftentimes that's from chronic inflammation. And for me, I'm like, I was chronically inflamed from the foods I was eating. I ate chronically inflaming foods for decades and decades. It's no wonder I would probably end up with cancer eventually if I continued to do that sort of thing. But you're absolutely right. Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting fired up now too, but I'm on the same page. It is crystal clear, I think, for us, once you get out of that brain fog. Part of the problem, I think, is people that are eating that food have that brain fog. They're fatigued. They can barely get out of bed in the morning, so they can't wrap their brains around these sort of things. But you nailed it. Every financial incentive is to keep being unhealthy, eating unhealthy foods. And all of the studies that I used to hear, I used to think, oh, that's science. That's there for my benefit. They're all funded by some company or some medication or some bias to get you to buy more sugar and more junk food and all that stuff. So I'm sorry, I could go off on a tangent on that for a while. Yeah. I wanted to ask you more, Coach Stephen, about coaching.
Can I just talk about the heart disease? Can I just talk about the heart disease very, very briefly? Sorry, because a lot of people say their counter argument would be, well, we've got better diagnostic tools now. Well, if you look at autopsies have been around literally 2,000 years, at least 2,000 years, and we could say pretty detailed ones for the last 400 years. And heart disease is really noticeable. I mean, it is really, really noticeable. So it wasn't until 1911, an autopsy in 1911, where they realized there was a heart disease issue with this person. 1911, all right? So we had 400 years, and you could really stretch it to 1,500 years of autopsies where not one person went, whoa, look at the heart. There's something not right there, okay? And in the old days, they actually looked at things in nature and considered what they were seeing. They didn't have vested interests. They wanted to write a book that would make them famous because they discovered something. So the chips were stacked on finding heart disease or something there, and they didn't. It took till 1911. I just want to re-emphasize that when they first saw heart disease. Well, 1911 was also around the time when they didn't know about diabetes. They didn't know about insulin, but they started with cottonseed manufacture, and they started with seed oils, and they started promoting more sugar, and they started promoting smoking. And it's not to do with diagnostic tools being better. It's not to do with that. It's to do with the fact that there is now more heart disease. It is that simple, and it has just gone through the roof again. As you say, we're eating inflammatory foods, and we're eating stuff that's going to bring you heart disease. And that was the other thing, wasn't it? The confounder with the American president who suddenly had heart disease, and he wanted to know what it was. He got Ansel Keys in, and Ansel Keys did not want to say it was smoking, and he did not want to say it was fat. It was sugar. He had to say it was fat because that's where the money was.
Yeah, what a deadly lie that has turned out to be. My goodness, and it just keeps going over and over again. Yeah, and in terms of being crystal clear too, it's like you said, heart disease is rampant right now. It's the number one killer. And I'm just thinking back, meat has been demonized so much. Like you're saying, in the UK, it's all trying to go plant-based. Same thing here in the US. I mean, for years, low fat, don't eat meat, cut the meat off the steak. The consumption of meat, like everyone is scared and terrified of it, yet heart disease is the number one killer and it's rampant. Like, how do people not see those two things and think about it a little bit more? It is definitely crystal clear.
You wanted to talk about coaching. Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, right. The coaching thing. So I am a huge proponent of people getting coaching. However, when I first started Carnivore, and I'll share the reasons why I'm a huge proponent for it, but when I first started Carnivore, I was more cynical. I'm like, why do you need coaching, right? You're just going to eat some meat. It's not that hard. You don't need a coach. Can you talk about why coaching is so important and why you're so passionate about it?
Because people think that it's just about eating meat. And well, that is the nub of it. I mean, that is true. If you can eat the right way, it's great. Also, I'd like to say to people that smoke, just give it up. Just give up smoking. And I'd just say to the people that are alcoholics, just stop drinking tomorrow. You'll be all right. That's it. So as soon as you reframe it, how ridiculous it is to say it's just about eating meat. And I wasn't trying to belittle you, Kerry.
No, you're right.
There's more to it. We just talked about 40, 50 years of being brainwashed into thinking that fat is bad for you and red meat is bad for you. And not only that, you're also told that grains are good for you and fruit and veg is good for you. So there's a lot of re-education. That's the first thing. Taking the fear out of this way of eating. Explain to people exactly why this way of eating can work. Sharing success stories to take away the fear. I mean, fear and misinformation about this way of eating are the two biggest things I have to combat. Misinformation coming from the medical profession as well, like we just said about the chronic progressive nature of type 2 diabetes, even though many people are proving that to be completely false. Many people still think it. They still think, oh, I've got type 2 diabetes. What can I do? You're my last hope. That's what I hear. I get that a lot. I've tried everything. You are my last hope. I also get, after 6 months, I'd like to do a success story. Thank you for helping. And I always ask, well, what helped? Accountability. That's one. Keeping you on the straight and narrow. Asking questions, getting the right knowledge. Dispelling some of the myths around carnivore, that you've got to eat just beef, salt and water. Well, that's not true. You can have lots and lots of variety. How do you deal with social situations? How do you deal with a relative who's well-meaning saying you've got to eat fruit and veg? So that's where coaching comes in. I think it's very individual what will turn someone on or off to this way of eating. Social pressure and the legacy media will scare the living daylights out of them. Like I say, osteoporosis. Oh, I'm terrified. Well, you don't need to be, because you can reverse it. Well, you need a level head, but some people don't like that. So I'll say, okay, that's my level-headed answer. Here are some actual people talking about that they reversed it. Well, you still don't believe it. Well, here are their DEXA scans. I don't have people coming onto my show to do a success story that's out of this world, getting off the kidney transplant list unless I've got some proof. All right. So even after 5 years, I know that you've got to be right on top of your game and be able to prove what you're saying, which isn't true the other way of eating. There is no real solid proof. I don't see many people saying, wow, I'm drinking 6 Coca-Colas a day and look how healthy I am. That doesn't happen. But there are definitely people out there saying, I'm eating a pound of meat a day and look how healthy I've got. And coaching is important for many different things. I mean, one of the reasons I wrote the books, especially the guide to blood tests, is because you have to unpack a lot of stuff about normal ranges in bloods, how they're not normal compared to someone that's eating this way. So if you're looking at a range, and that's taken from the average person who's eating 60% carbohydrates, and 88% of the people that give bloods for these ranges tend to be ill in one way or another. They're not optimal. You're using ranges to get your health in a position where you're the same as someone eating 60% carbohydrates who isn't particularly healthy. So a lot of them are nonsense, and a lot of them are just calculations. So once you get into that, my filtration rate of my kidney's really bad. Well, do you know it's a calculation, and you can do a different test and actually prove that isn't true, because they're basing their assumptions on you eating 60% carbohydrates and on these normal ranges and your creatinine and your urea, which is going to be different because you're eating slightly more protein. So you can do a different test and get the proper filtration rate. So that's the sort of thing that coaching does. It takes things that are scary. And I know I rushed that, but I tend to explain things in a simpler way. I've only got like 40 minutes or whatever. So all the common misconceptions, you can put that person's mind at rest. You can talk to their family. One of the things about fruit and veg is I got a lot of information from the growers themselves. I did all the PDFs from all the food producers and all the stuff behind the scenes. And I did like a 16-minute video about fruit and veg, and the truth of the matter that you pluck that apple from the tree, 16 months later, it's on the shelf. 16 months. What
Wow.
happens to the apple in that time, in the controlled environment, in the different gaseous environment that they're in? What happens to the fruit? Alleged that they haven't got many nutrients in the first place, but what happens to those as it's sitting on the shelf? This is from the food growers talking about it. And literally, an apple like that is just a bag of sugar by that time. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. Water, fiber, and sugar. Well, that's it. That's not great. Whereas, a ribeye has come from an animal, which is a beautiful machine with 4 stomachs that takes the sun's energy from the grass that they're eating, from the nutrients from the soil, which is the food that we've been eating for 300,000 years, which is proven with stable isotope testing. And that magic formula produces proteins and amino acids and fats that we thrive on. And I show them that. And then also talk about how the food growers are talking about the pesticides and the animals they have to kill to keep these crops growing. You can go and look at a monocropped field if you like, if you can get past security. And if you have a vehicle that can drive miles looking at one crop that's covered in plastic and it's like Fort Knox, and you will not see a butterfly or a mouse, you will not see a rabbit or a badger, you will see no life because they are absolutely obliterated. And 21 more times animals die to feed a vegan than to feed a carnivore. Well, you can prove all this. It's all provable, but it's not going to be on the legacy media because, well, who pays for CNN? What are the adverts showing you? The adverts are showing you fruit, veg, all the sort of sugary stuff that they want to flog you. So they're not going to tell you, are they? Because that's like biting the hand that feeds you. The pharmaceutical companies, they advertise as well. Well, they're not going to do anything to, help that TV company that's just suddenly said, Coca-Cola can stop you needing insulin if you drop it. So it's all vested interests. And again, coaching can show you those details. I send all the studies. If someone's worried about it, I say, look, these are the true life stories. This is why this is happening. This is why you're not hearing it. And I think it just makes people feel very comfortable with their decision. I'm not a doctor. I'm just well educated. I've got the qualifications. I've got the life experience. I've got the clients. So I think people feel okay about that. I don't do videos ripping people apart. That's not my cup of tea. There are plenty of people that do it brilliantly and in an entertaining fashion. I just get the information and I present it. I'm glad I've written 5 books: How to Be Carnivore, Guide to Blood Tests, the insulin model of obesity, how to grow muscle without carbs, and a cookbook. And so you don't even have to buy coaching. If you just want information about bloods and you can't afford coaching, you can just get the book off Amazon. It's $10 and you'll get the information you need. But if you want to speak to a person, I offer, my personal WhatsApp. I get some people just take a picture of what they're eating every single time they eat. They send it to me. I mean, that's a free service I do once someone's booked a bit of coaching. I've got a guy that's been doing that for 2 years because he just wants the accountability. And I like the fact that 2 years after he finished coaching, I'm still getting, wow, I've hit another excellent thing. I'm as light as I've ever been as an adult. I can get into clothes I can't believe I can get into. I'm performing with my band and, I look great. You get all this different feedback from people constantly. And it's really, it's just really heartening to coach. I actually sleep really well because I know I'm giving people the right information. They're going to get healthier. My only sort of troubling calls are always the first ones because you've got to unpick a lot of misinformation that they're coming with, and they're just scared. They're just scared to do it. They booked it because they've seen things that have made them convinced this is the right way to do it, but everyone around them is trying to talk them out of it. So they just want to find some reasons or some things to say or to put their mind at rest. And that's the benefit of coaching. You get somebody that will give you the information, will answer your questions, not get defensive, doesn't have a vested interest in selling you tons of supplements or this, that, and the other. Even though I talk about bloods, I don't do any of the blood tests. I don't recommend any labs. I just look at the test and say, right, that's what that's testing. That's what that thing does that they're testing. That's why it's important. And that range might be inappropriate for the way you're eating. So we need to look at clinical presentation. Then you can go back to your doctor and say X, Y, and Z. And that, that bit of information or that bit of knowledge has changed people's lives. So I've literally had people message me and say, you have saved my life. And when I'm doing the interviews, the success stories, they'll name check Ken Berry, Chafee, Dr. Lisa Wilderman, Kelly Hogan, everyone. They've watched these people. So it's life-changing, and they're doing a good job, because these people are literally saying to me that, Ken Berry saved my life. Simple as that. Yeah. Saved my life. I'm like, yeah, great. These are good people.
Yeah, I agree. So I was cynical at first about coaching, and I've since changed, realizing how powerful this is and how hard it is to do, because we're living in a world where we're the weird ones. We're the odd ones out. So just getting that reassurance and just even talking to someone, but there's nothing, everything in life, as we were talking earlier, is sadly money focused drivers, and nothing is more valuable. Everyone wants to win the lottery, right? I really feel like this is better than winning the lottery. I said this when I did my 30-day update. If I had a lottery ticket for $1 billion and it meant that I would never know about this way of living or eating, I would rip it up in a second without thinking about it, because I wasn't living before this. I was suffering so bad in brain fog and fatigue. So if you can get coaching to help you get to that point, like, what is more valuable than having your life? It really, doing this documentary more, one of the things that really weighs on me is the fact that the majority of humanity is never going to feel like we feel, like fulfilling your potential as a human being with no inflammation, no brain fog, full of energy. That is such a sad thing. The value in being able to have that, you can't even measure it. And for those small cost of coaching, and by the way, I'm not like an affiliate for Coach Steven or anything, or any of these coaches. I'm just saying this because I truly believe it. Like, if I would have had to go back and pay a ton of money for coaching, it totally would have been worth it, just on the sheer fact of I have my life now. My life is so much better now than it was before. I'm truly living now where I was suffering before. But being in a world, like you mentioned too, if you're addicted to alcohol or cocaine or some hard drug, yeah, just drop it. No, you'd have to have help, and you'd have to have someone. And what's more addictive than sugar that is literally everywhere in every single product, and everyone's normalized it, and you go to grandma's house and she tries to give it to you. So I've since changed my tune. I'm a big advocate for coaching for sure now.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one of the things I say in coaching as well, the big difference between sugar addiction and the other two. If you say I'm addicted to alcohol, everyone will try to help you. You say I'm addicted to cigarettes, everyone will try to help you. If you say I'm addicted to sugar, nobody. You're just an idiot. You just need to stop eating. So that's exactly what Big Food and Big Pharma have put out there. There's no such thing, sugar addiction. It's not a real thing. It just takes you to eat less, move more. It's normalized. It's genetics. See, that's the other thing. I get people losing maybe 200 pounds, and I say, oh, it's great. You didn't actually do it by diet. You changed your genes. Well done. How did you do that? And they're like, what are you talking about? So, well, apparently in the news, it's all genetics now. So you must have changed your genetic code. Well, no, it's all about eating. And as long as people have got the sense of humor, they see that what I'm saying is the legacy media are just lying. It's just flat out lies, because there's too many people proving that it's flat out lies. You only really need one person, actually, but when it's hundreds of thousands reversing type 2 diabetes, when it's hundreds of thousands losing 200 pounds and keeping it off, they're doing something right. And sadly, you will not get a story in the national news without, and if you do, it will be you're eating a bizarre diet, and then there'll be something about a dietitian who thinks they should be eating tofu and strawberries instead of this. And it's ridiculous. It doesn't get a fair hearing. It's just fear. It's just fear mongering. Even when it's a good story, even when it's an athlete doing brilliantly who's on Carnivore, or a sports person. There are sports people out there. I mean, I can't name them, who can't say that they're doing this way of eating, because the sponsors of their football team or whatever are plant-based.
Yeah.
It's just atrocious. Anyway, I don't want to get into too much politics. I have edged into it a little bit, and
right.
I remember when I joined up with MeatRx when I first started doing the carnivore coaching 5 years ago, and thinking, wow, Sean Baker does get a bit political. You cannot actually divide food production away from politics. And that's something that I have learned. And for those people that are watching, obviously they're watching you because they're interested in this way of eating, or they're trying to do a takedown video of you. But I would say 99% of the people are interested. If you're fed up with hearing about politics as part of the food production, come back in a year's time. The more you eat this way, the more you will realize that it is a political weapon. And they're definitely beating you over the head with it because they don't want you eating animal foods. They just don't want that because it's not good for the pharmaceutical companies. It's just not good for the legacy media. It's not good because of the advertising revenue. They want you to do plant-based because it's just so profitable for the supermarkets and all the people in that supply chain that just make money out of it. That's all it is. It's not about your health. It is not about you at all. They do not care about you at all.
Right. Yeah. We're suffering and dying for other people to make profits. In short, it's absolutely criminal.
Yeah.
Criminal. So I can't believe it's been an hour already. Coach Stephen, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. Huge shout out. Everyone check out Coach Stephen at theukcarnivore.com. I'll have a link in the description below. Is there anything else you wanted to mention or shout out before we wrap up?
Well, no. I mean, I've got my books. Hang on. I'll get my books. You can edit that bit out. So I've done. There's a Diabetes Decoded. That one there, which is all about diabetes. And let's get to the other two that are really popular. So the Guide to the Blood Test. This is the most popular book I've written. It's all referenced, loads in there. Since it's been printed, there's loads I could add, but that's very good. It talks about a lot of things that I've mentioned. And a really simple one is the How to Be Carnivore, which is nice and easy, nice big print for people that are always moaning. It's really simple. Dive into it. Lots and lots of information. How to do this way of eating. Well, that was my bookmark. All about plant toxins and what's good to eat. So there's loads of stuff that you can get from Amazon. You can get it from my store if you like ebooks. That's it, really.
Wonderful. I love what you're doing, Coach Stephen. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And everyone go check out Coach Stephen over at theukcarnivore.com. Thank you so much, Coach Stephen. Have a good day.
And you, thanks for having me on, Kerry. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.